Welcome to Conflict Managed. I'm your host, Mary Brown. Conflict Managed is a weekly podcast about toxic work environments and how to fix them. We're glad you're here. Good morning, Joel, and welcome to Conflict Managed.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to speak with you today and hear all about you and your wonderful new book, Life Switch. But before we get to that, I would like to hear about the first job you ever had as a young person.
First job I had was not great, and I think that's true for most people. But I sold alarm systems, and it was actually after my first year in college. I actually was trying to get jobs in high school, and I couldn't do it. I thought I had a job at Boston Market, and it didn't happen. Real bummer. It's okay. But selling alarms was my job, and it was two different shifts. In the summer, I would go in the morning and I would cold call people. I would go to supermarkets and try to get leads and give away things like the newspaper. And then the second shift of the day, I would go into Philadelphia, which is not the most friendly city. And I would knock on people's doors, usually not in the best areas. And I was typically stood up, met with very aggressively barking dogs. I did sell some alarm systems, but what it did do, other than entertain me and my friend who worked with me, it got me to learn how to sell and how not to sell. And even though I have no interest in selling alarms, selling is something that everybody does. You know, you're selling yourself in everything that you do, whether you're an employee or an employer, or even trying to convince a friend or a loved one. You know, with my wife, I feel like I'm selling sometimes. Let's do this, let's not do that. So selling is a skill that I think everybody could hone those skills, and that helped me do that at an early age.
What an amazing first job. That sounds horrific. I mean, it just sounds so difficult. First of all, cold calling makes me break out in sweats, right? And then just, pounding the pavement, knocking on doors. I can't imagine how many rejections you got, like what the percentage of rejections versus the sell. But as you said, what a wonderful introduction to the world of work, to
Yeah.
tenacity, to human psychology, to who you are showing up and what's working and what doesn't work, and how to deal
Yeah.
with the elements like dogs. I sold pizza. I mean, I delivered pizza, dogs are there.
Yeah.
All the elements, the things you can't control.
You know what else will also help me in this position? My best friend growing up, we got the job together that summer, and it was not a lot of fun. It was a little bit boring, and rejection was the main thing that we did. Was we got rejected most of the time. So we started doing this thing with each other in the cubicles, where one of us would be on the call calling somebody, the other one was trying to make the other one laugh. And the game we created within the system was to try to make these calls and not laugh out loud to the potential client. And it actually really was a good skill because if you think about it, in your life and your work now, not being distracted is a skill. And
Mhm.
being able to deal with hecklers and naysayers and other forms of challenges like technology not working. And so it really actually got us to be able to kind of lock in more and just focus on the task at hand. And so we made it fun, and that's one thing I wanted to share is make things fun at work, create a game within the game. But also in things like that, you are strengthening your skills, you're sharpening your iron. So that's something we did. Didn't really know what we were doing at the time, but that was the end result.
That is so interesting that you thought to do it because, yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking the developing of being present, right? So being present is being very aware and focused that I'm doing this instead of something else. And where you've got all of this distraction, someone actively trying to mess you up, get you off script, make you laugh. And so you have to really be able to tune that out, but you are tuned in because it's a game, it's fun, you're trying to do something, but you have to be so aware. And so many times we just go on habit or autopilot, and especially if it's a task we don't like or we don't feel like we're good at, it can be really easy to not give it our all, to just kind of meander through instead of that real a gift of locking in, being present, and paying attention, how much we get when we really pay attention to the task or the other in front of us.
Yeah, and paying attention is critical, of course. And for the younger generation, which we'll talk more about later on, it's harder to do. So it's important to be aware of that and start with that premise that you need to be paying attention. I'll talk about my son later with that, who's 17 and a half. But it's also about you don't want to focus on what you're trying to avoid because whatever you're thinking about is where you're going to go towards. If
Mm,
you're driving in your car and there's an accident on the side of the road, if you're looking at that accident, you have a higher chance of drifting towards it. And you actually hear about this quite a bit. You see videos of cop cars getting hit because people are looking, and so they're sort of mentally or subconsciously drifting over there because they're mentally drifting over there. So when we were making these calls, we weren't thinking, at least I wasn't thinking, don't laugh. I was thinking, listen to the client, listen to the customer, make the sale. So I was focusing on what I wanted and taking what I didn't want and throwing it in the back seat and really trying to focus on where I wanted to go. And so I think that's a skill, really an organization of how you think is don't focus on what you're trying to avoid. Skip that, put the blinders on and focus on what you want and where you want to go. It really helps out. And so, if you have an annoying person at work, how many people at work do you have that are positive type of influences?
mm.
And ignore that person and spend time with the person or the people that you want to spend time with.
I love that so much. It's so true in conflict that whatever that thing is, it just blooms and grows and becomes so much of what we can see and can become all consuming. But that is a choice to focus on that. We can choose to instead to focus on the better parts, the things that we are enjoying, the person who, like you said, instead of the one annoying person or whatever we find annoying, the one person who we think is out to get us versus the 10 or 20 who are good colleagues, who are people that we can network with, who are people we can do good things with, or as you said in the beginning, have fun with, right? This idea of joy and fun and play has such a role in us having good experiences at work and us being our best and having a good overall life.
Yep, absolutely.
So, where did you go after selling alarm systems?
Well, went back to college the next year, and that's following summer. I worked in the casino, a casino in Atlantic City, in the customer rewards or customer service section, which I thought was really cool. My first day, I said, "Hey, I love it. If you need me to work more hours or work more days, I will." And within about a week or so, that enthusiasm went away. But that was an interesting job because I dressed up in a suit. I got a lot of great benefits. The pay was good. But it got me to see why I don't like gambling. And that's in any part of life, planning for success versus spinning the wheel or hoping for the best and doing nothing to plan for the worst or nothing to put hard work in. It's empty. And generally, when you look at any casino, it's pretty beautiful. There's a lot of fancy, expensive things. Generally, people don't win when they gamble. A few do, but most people finance the few winners that are there. So it got me to realize that I shouldn't gamble with my life and my success. I should invest in myself and give myself the highest chance to succeed. And I think everybody should do that. If you want to play the lottery here or there, that's fine. But don't make your retirement plan hitting the lottery because it's very unlikely to happen.
Mm. Yeah, another great first job of really seeing what happens, like the what's behind the glamour, right? Like of
Hmm.
course DraftKings and everything else is out there and whatever people gamble, but it's just like with drinking or anything else, whatever you're doing it responsibly in moderation. But if that's something that you're betting on, you are going to lose because
Yeah.
the house always wins or else there's no house, right? Those sites
Yeah.
won't be there if you're not going to win. But when we think about that for our own life, right? Instead of this wish fulfillment of somebody look at me, somebody notice me, somebody, I'm just waiting because I'm great, rather than being proactive and okay, I want X, what do I need to do to get it? And really investing and being active in what it is that we want instead of this passive way of thinking about work and life.
Yeah, and when you think about what we just talked about gambling, you're going to win or you're going to lose. If you lose, you lose. If you lose your money. And it's also not a numbers game where if you keep losing and giving all your money to the casino, then you go get a line of credit from somewhere, or your credit card, or you give your car keys. You can lose that. It's not that, okay, if I lose 9 times, I'm going to hit on the 10th. There's no redeeming benefit of losing. But in the real world, when you take chances and you lose or you fail, you can gain things. If you view things the right way, there is no losing. There's losses sometimes, but those losses end up creating the gains. And you think about this in sports, sometimes the team might lose a big game and then they watch the other team celebrate. That gives them fuel. And oftentimes those teams come back that almost made it and they come back the next year and they get over the hump and they do win. You hear about it all the time. And so life losing doesn't actually end up in a loss. It just is helping you get closer to the next win. Same thing in sales. When you hear no, 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 it's often a numbers game. You eventually will hear a yes. But in pure gambling, you're not vesting in anything. You're simply hoping, and a lot of people, they hope and that's all they get, and that doesn't pay the bills.
Hmm. That is such a great point because I agree. What I'm really interested is in conflict and conflict at work. And sometimes people will say, okay, Mary, I did it. I had this conversation and it went sideways. It was a loss. I should not have done it. And I think, well, okay, well, let's talk about what happened. But it's every time you do it, you learn, you grow. You say, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do that. An opportunity to refine. And so, whether or not you quote unquote win or lose a conversation, I don't think there is winning or losing. That's first of all, the wrong way to think about conflict or having a conversation with somebody or what's going on. But all of it is learning. We constantly learn, absolutely, through our successes, the things that didn't go well, the things that blew up in our face. I mean, pain is a teacher. We can decide to learn those lessons or not, right? Some of us keep on having to have the same lessons handed to us because we're not learning.
Hmm.
And the world's going to grant us lots of opportunities to learn in that way. And it can sting and be difficult. But the question is, what are we going to see? Yeah, what really is failure? What is that versus what does it mean to live a life well lived, which is about progress, about the long game, about if I want to get to this particular place, what is it realistically going to take? And it's not going to be a
Yeah.
series of win, 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 win. That's unrealistic and actually will probably not take you there because we learn so much from the no, from the personal disappointment, from when I didn't show up in my best, so that I do something different.
Yeah, totally. You're right. Emotions drive action. Emotions are much more powerful teachers than thoughts. And so if you have something happen or somebody driving you crazy, how can you utilize that? And that's the thing about emotions. They're sort of telling us what to do, but without specific words. So you have to decode or decipher what it is. You're playing charades almost with yourself. Okay, I'm feeling this way. Why? And that's why you can view your ride home or commute home as time wasted, or you can view it as time to really look within and understand what's happening with you. Emotions come out sometimes. They might be 6 months ahead of you. You're not really sure, but you take while you're feeling, and instead of being distracted and feeling a certain way, try to almost like reach in and grab that emotion. It's like, why is this here? And what can I do with it? Is there something positive I can do with it? Or if not really, how can I get away so this emotion doesn't keep coming back up? So looking in the mirror, looking within yourself, that's one of the keys to success. Because if you understand how you're wired and what's happening, you're going to be able to understand the workplace and everything else around you a heck of a lot better.
Absolutely. Right. For those of us, I spend a lot of time trying to deny my emotional responses, stuff it down, people pleaser. And the more I've said, okay, well, what if I sit with this? What's going to happen? It turns out, oh, I sit with it. It doesn't feel great. And then it passes. And then I can sit and reflect, what was that telling me? Right? Those emotions of, anger or annoyance or being scared or whatever it might be, unsettled. Now, because I've allowed myself to feel it in my body and to think, I can now think about it. What is that telling me? Now, what do I want to do instead of just reacting to it? I get to respond. I'm in a process. This is for me, this is going to be a lifelong process to the end of my days to really figure out my emotional responses. But I'm really now happy to be doing this work because I see the benefit of integrating the self, right? All, the emotional side, the rational side, all the different sides, the physical side, into the one person that I am, that we are.
Yeah, totally. When you talk about that, you're really mining your thoughts, right? You picture somebody at the beach with a metal detector. So they're going around and everyone else might just see sand, but they know that there's other things within that. So if you just look at yourself, it's a Tuesday, I'm tired, I'm annoyed, I'm down, I didn't sleep well, or you could really, get out that sort of detector, the emotion detector, and pull out those gems and
Mhm.
figure out what you can do with them. And so that's just the visual that I get when you mention that.
I love that, thinking about emotions as gems, because they are, they're precious. Information is golden, right? We act on the information that we have. And if we don't have a good data set or we don't have all the right information, we're not going to be making the best decisions. And emotion is data. And the more we think about it as gifts, I love that, to mine, not just to mine, but as gems. That's really nice. So, to
Yeah.
college, what did you major in college?
I majored in business and marketing specifically. And again, it goes back to what I said before. You're always selling yourself or you're always marketing yourself and all that you do, relationships, conversations, how you carry yourself. If someone shows up to work for me in an interview and that person is just not put together at all, to me, I'm going to assume that they're going to do their work and probably be a little sloppy with it and not put together. So marketing, I always thought was important. And with that, I always knew I was an entrepreneur. I wanted to have my own business. And so I just focused on how I can learn to be good at promoting things and be able to get people's attention in a way that didn't feel cheesy and didn't feel slimy.
So when you graduated from college, did you go ahead and start your own business, or what sort of is the trajectory that got you to where you are today?
Well, no, I did not. Actually, I took a big, greasy step back and I went to work at Burger King when I graduated from college. And that was a very strategic move. And I felt bad for my fiance at the time, who also went to the same school. She said, what's that? What's Joel doing? He graduated. What's he doing? Is he gonna light the world on fire? And she didn't want to tell people that I was going to Burger King. And they thought, why would you do that? Why would you go to college for 4 years and go work at a fast food restaurant? I did that because, as you now know, Mary, I never worked at a restaurant in my whole life. And the business that I decided to start when I graduated was a healthy fast food restaurant. So I needed to work in a fast food restaurant to learn how they did it. So I was a manager trainee when I graduated, and I worked there for about 3 months. I had a daily journal, and I took notes, and that book was covered and smelled like grease. And I always, every day I took a shower because I was covered in it, even though I never once ate anything, not even a single French fry when I worked at Burger King, because they were the reason I was creating my business. They were sort of the enemy. And I decided I wanted to create a rival that was going to be healthy, was going to be convenient, and it was going to be well priced, so it was affordable for anybody. And so that's what I did when I graduated from college. I went down that fast food path, and ultimately, a couple of years later, I did open up my restaurant business.
Oh, that is so interesting. People are so creative, and I love hearing people's paths and what they see as to get them to their goal. So a lot of times we have a goal and we just want to arrive there, but we don't really think about, this is my goal. What's the gap in my education or the skills that I have in order to reach that? And you did that. You said, I want to go here, but I need this first. So what was the experience like of starting and operating, owning your own food business?
Well, I'm surprised I have any hair left in my head. It was incredibly difficult, and I think most people know that restaurants are one of the hardest businesses to have. A very
Mhm.
high failure rate. I think it's 90% failure within 3 years, and I unfortunately became part of that statistic. It is extremely difficult, but I ended up having about 16 employees, ultimately three different restaurants, small chain in Philadelphia. And I was 24 years old. I'm still like a kid, and I have employees that are older than me. Every single one of them had more restaurant experience than me. And what ended up happening was there were so many issues and conflicts that had nothing to do with healthy food or healthy fast food that I had to deal with. I had a guy come in with a gun.
Mhm.
I had people that called out because they found a loved one dead.
Mhm.
People ended up in jail. I mean, it was I remember just thinking to myself and screaming internally, like, what's going on? Like, how can I deal with all this? I just want to make healthy food so people can eat it. So it was one conflict after another. And that was just with the people. I had issues with my building, I had issues with my landlord, I had issues with so many things that it was incredibly difficult. So to answer your question, it was brutal, but the failure of my restaurant ultimately led to massive success in the next chapter of my life, which was creating a financial services company, which I still run today.
Wow. Yes. I mean, I when I think about the food business, I think the business itself is difficult because of waste and, all the stuff that goes into, who's going to show up. There's just so many different things, but the people aspect of that, as you said, it's not just the employees. You've got also the customers, but then you've got all the vendors. And I mean, just if you were not prepared for that part, right? That is more than a full-time part is running the people aspect so that you can do what it is that you want to do. Wow.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when you think about how you deal with conflict now and versus how you dealt with conflict then, um, how about this? Can you tell us about maybe a conflict that you had during that time in your life, how you dealt with it, and how you would deal with it differently now, if you would
Mhm.
deal with it differently now?
Yeah, one of the things to think about, and it was dealing with several components of this, and it's something that I don't do anymore, but it's something I had to really change and morph into who I was in certain situations. I was always a very nice guy, and I still am. But I had to sort of turn green, like the Hulk. Like David Banner is the scientist who turns green and his muscles pop out and rips his clothes off, and he turns into the Incredible Hulk. I had to sort of turn into that at times. And the most notable, really first time I had to do that was when my contractor was building out the first restaurant. He was kind of pushing me off and this and that, giving me the runaround and overcharging and taking longer to do everything. And I had to really force myself to kind of get nasty with him, to actually use some curse words. And I never spoke to somebody like that before. To me, I just that's not how I'm wired. But I realized that that was going to be the most effective way to get him to get it done. And I was right. And so I really was able to put sort of turn things around instead of being on the defensive and waiting for the calls. I was able to go on the offensive, and it was effective to do that. And but then the key was to compartmentalize that Hulk version of me, to not use that in my home life or to speak to my employees that way. And so now. Fast forward, I had a property that I was working with a contractor, and we sold this property 2 years ago after it took us about 2 years to build. And every time I wanted to turn green and yell at him, I realized that that's not going to work in this case. It's only going to push him back. And I said, I don't have to like this guy. I don't have to live with this guy, but I need this guy to build this property. And so I would always make it a point that I was watching, I was aware, I wasn't happy, but I would never take it to the point of creating a divide where he might pull back or slow down or stop. And ultimately, I just viewed it as, hey, we're on the same page, we have the same goal, we're wired very differently, but I am not going to accept the conflict that he was sending my way at times,
Mm.
which was really hard to bite my tongue. But I knew the best way to get to the goal, the mutual goal, was to not turn green and get nasty with this guy. And ultimately, it worked out. And, looking back, I would have loved to tell him what I thought, but it would not have helped my goal, my purpose. And that's the thing when you're dealing with other people is this helping or is this just an emotional outburst? And
Hmm.
you have to be able to control that. Again, in the first case, I needed that emotional outburst to get what I wanted, to make it more productive. But there are times, like speaking to your spouse, that's not going to work. And you have to find and again think about those conversations and things in the past where you did get your way, where something worked. Each person works in a different way. So you've got to adapt like a chameleon in each situation to know who you're dealing with and how you can conduct yourself and how they are viewing you. And a lot of times, we do something called kill people with kindness. Sometimes even if they're nasty or all these other things, we're just, hey, I understand. We appreciate that. Thank you for telling me how you feel. And it almost where you really dull their Hulk personality because you're like, man, this person's a really nice person and maybe I should back off. And so sometimes you can use it that way as well.
Yeah, it's really important to know who you're communicating with, and but and to know what is your goal. Right. In conflict, a lot of times people want to vent. They want that other person to know about the pain that this other person has caused them, how terrible they are. They want what they want is this emotional outburst. They want to be seen. They want that other person to know it. They want the other person to feel it. And I understand that want, but the question is, what do you really want? Do you want a healthy work environment? Is this going to get you there? The answer is no, it's not. Right. So, all right. So there is a place to vent, but like at work, right, we've got to keep things professional, right? And so if you vent, that is going to be a poor reflection on you, and it's not going to get you what you want. And you're going to be leaving dissatisfied because that person's not going to turn around and say, "Oh my gosh, Mary, you're so right. I'm the villain and you're the hero." You're not going to get that narrative. So it's just going to make things even worse. So having that goal, what am I trying to achieve? Crystal clear so that you can work backwards. And if I do have these big emotions, those need to be recognized. But what is a appropriate, healthy way that I can let that out? And I would say, now everybody does what they want to do, but even with those people where they are, really need maybe a strong arm, those people don't get to dictate, right, how we're going to show up, right? And so sometimes we have to part ways. Now, so there are exceptions, right? There are dire exceptions where maybe I've got to swallow something for the good of the whole community, right? Of course, there are
Mhm.
exceptions, but
Mhm.
by and large, we can figure out how to communicate to that person and, where we're not going to go. And as you said, we can not match their energy, but a lot of times bring it down to deflate what their nasty energy is. And we're just not going to play that game. And we're just going to
Yeah.
be professional with them.
And like I said earlier, you can also play that game within the game. Let's
Right.
see. Okay, Paul is driving me crazy today. How can I try these different scenarios? I'm going to try 5 scenarios of personalities when I see what maybe works. And so if
Mm,
Paul's not responding the way you want him to, it's like, okay, strike one, strike two, but you make it a game instead of it being okay, this is frustrating or okay, this is not frustrating. It's how can I try to play this game within here? So whatever happens, I'm making progress, I'm passing time, I'm trying things, and you kind of go from there. So again, make it a game, which makes it more tolerable and probably makes it more productive to understand this because I believe there is a way to have a relationship work with anybody. And it's because of what you said, Mary, it's the key is looking at what's the goal? What am I, or maybe even better, what are we trying to accomplish? And how do we do that together? And I was listening to there's a new show about Allen Iverson, and he had a coach in Philadelphia when he played on the Sixers, which was Larry Brown, and they were butting heads. And Allen Iverson, the player, said, "You've got to fire the coach." And the coach said, "You've got to get rid of this guy." And the GM brought them together and explained to them that neither one of them are going anywhere. They have the same goals. They're very much the same people and the same personalities, but they're not exactly on the same page as how they viewed it and they put each other in each other's shoes. And by the end of this meeting, they got up and hugged each other and
mm.
had one of the best relationships that I think sports has ever seen. And nothing really changed except sort of sitting down and not only getting on the same page, but realizing that they already were, just being at the right spot on that same page.
That's a great example because it really highlights conflict. A lot of times we think it's external. It's about the thing they're doing, but it's not. It's internal, how I'm understanding the thing and what they're doing and a motive I'm ascribing to them. And yeah, that means, which is such wonderful news because we can change that narrative, right? If that person in my office is driving me crazy, that's a particular narrative. But this idea of gamifying it gives me all of these sorts of options where I'm no longer held hostage to their tapping their foot or whatever it is they're doing that's driving me crazy. I can now say, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. And now I'm back in control. I'm not passive anymore. I get to control. And therefore, a lot of times it just dissipates because my mind is now thinking about different ways in which to find a path forward. And usually, I mean, there's always a path forward. We may not like it. And so we eliminate it. But if we get creative and really think, there are a variety of things available here. What paths am I going to try, choose, and move forward with?
Yeah, you go from annoying to interesting. Let's see what works. For I know this guy's going to drive me nuts, but let's see what's going to work. And again, that's where it becomes a game, and that's where it flips it on its head, where it's like you're almost like, okay, let's see what happens today.
Yeah. Uh, so I've been married for a long time and I love my husband dearly. And all of us, everybody is quirky and everybody has certain habits. And my husband, he's a philosophy professor, but he's a drummer. He majored in drumming in college and he is constantly drumming. And I just visually think of it, he's like leaking energy. And sometimes, like all of a sudden, it will come up like we're watching a show and it comes up in my consciousness because he's strumming along to the background music. And I start to get annoyed by it. And then I move past that to endearment. I find him incredibly endearing. And I see I could stay here that I'm annoyed, or I could just keep on moving past. And if I can't, I can say something to him, right? You know, can I give you something? Or hey, can you quiet down? Or that I don't, it's a narrative to call nobody is annoying, right? Or nobody, these sorts of stories we say that make us stuck. Which makes me think about your book, The Life Switch. So tell us about your book, what it's about, and how it came about.
Yeah, it's about the choice to live on versus off. And a lot of people are going through their day and they're just seeing what happens, or they're watching things happen or asking what happened. But when you live on and making that conscious decision to flip the switch on, you're thriving. You're able to make things happen. You're able to see clearly what you're trying to do and feel why. And that gives you the best chance to make it happen. So you're here today, but you want to get to point B, having your switch on and being hyper aware of what the goal is and your blinders on, you're going to get there. The question is not if, the question is when. And so everybody should be thinking about their three P's. The first one is potential. Everyone has the potential to live a life that they want to live or better, right? The life that I'm living now has actually exceeded the potential I thought I had. And the further you see how high your potential is, the more you realize it can keep going higher. It can be virtually unlimited, but you've got to start somewhere. Then there's passion. If you're living without passion, this is like trying to drive your car without fuel. You might sputter along a little bit, but at some point you're going to end up stuck on the side of the road and thinking, how do I get here? How do I get out of here? Where am I? And so passion is really important to fuel and drive you to where you want to go. I think so many of us are so stuck in our routine, just going round and round in a circle, personally, professionally. A lot of people, they don't even remember who they really are and what they're passionate about. You go ask any kid what they're passionate about, they'll be able to tell you. But you ask an adult, and then let me get back to you. I'm not sure. Well, let's say I really like my job. Okay, all right. You're just saying that. Like I'm talking about you. You are not your job. Whatever your name tag says, that's not who you are. That's what you do. That's your title at work. But who you are as a person is a massive question. I picture the name tag. Hi, my name is. So many people are not able to fill that blank in. I'm not talking about your name. I'm talking about who you really are. A lot of people don't know. And in my career now, where I help people plan up to and throughout retirement, people are at this point, 65 plus. They finally retire from work, and a lot of them, they still don't know who they are. Why? It's are you haven't really got to know your real self. So it's super important. The third thing is purpose. So companies have a mission statement, right, of what they're trying to do every day for their shareholders, their employees, and their customers. But people oftentimes don't have that purpose or that mission statement. So you need to know, again, why you're doing what you do or who you're even doing it for. But there's a purpose for you getting out of bed every morning. So those are the three P's, and that's how you live on. When you're thinking about and activate all three P's and you're working on them on a regular basis, you flip the switch on, the light shines bright, and you are living the best version of your life. And that's the goal for everybody, to live that best version of themselves and of their lives. But you have to define it before you can start to live it.
Mm. I love that. It resonates with me. I love philosophy and reading and Aristotle talks about, what is the good life? And the good life for him is the active life. And so when I think about being on, right, so you've got potential, passion, and purpose, right? This is all imbued with intentionality. I'm actively engaged. I'm an active participant. I'm in the driver's seat of what I'm doing, versus being passive, where imagine you're just being carted around. So you're not deciding where you're going, how long you're going to be there, what the route's going to be. You're just being driven along. But the good life is the life that you live, right? I mean, you have to decide what it is and then do it. And it is in the doing of it, right? Because life is lived in the everyday, in the moments that we have. It's not lived on our deathbed, right? So
Mhm.
when we think about what the goal is, I want to talk about um, I don't want to leave your book, but that made me think of some of these videos that you've been posting recently that I really like. And one of them was you were talking about success, and you said, um, talking about daily success. I think a lot of times we think about success as when I have this much in the bank, or when I have this title, or when I have this happen in my family. And we put it out there as if that's the only way to think about success. But this idea of daily success, I think, is really beautiful and doable, and the only real that we have, because the only thing we have is right now anyway. So talk to us a little bit about daily success and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a really simple mentality, but super effective. If you look at a brick house, if you're looking at one right now or you're living in one, that house was built one brick at a time. It wasn't just a brick house was built. They put one brick down, another one on top, another one on top, and so on. So it was built one brick at a time. And so big success is the same way, whether you're a pro athlete, you're an executive, or you're a rising star. It's one good day after another. And again, that doesn't mean every day is going to be a win, but a productive day. A successful day is you did the things that you needed to do and wanted to do. And people are generally tired at the end of the day, not because of what they did, but it's because what they didn't do. There's a very funny, unfulfilling feeling of things left on the table. So I talk about not just a to-do list, but a must-do list or a to get done list. Like this isn't a suggestion. These are things that you need to do. So if you can identify what you need to do as far as daily activity, things you can control, if you do them, it is a successful day. Even if you're in sales, if your to do is make 15 contacts, 15 calls, have 5 meetings or whatever the goal is, if you can identify that that should equal long-term success and you do that, even if everybody says no, you make no sales, you make no money, that is a successful day because you're applying a winning recipe. And then you will have days where you do get higher than usual successes and yeses. So when you build your life on daily successes, successful days, that's where you can sort of zoom out and you'll realize you'll weave bigger success. Winning a winning lottery ticket isn't success. It's a lot of money. But as you have heard, a lot of people blow that money because they didn't learn the habits. They didn't build it. They didn't invest in it and appreciate it fully. So each day is like putting a brick down on building a house. So you do each day at a time. And when you look back in 30 days or 365 days, you can see what you built. You could really see it, feel it, and have that momentum to keep on building it. So it's figuring out what you know you need to do and simply just executing it every day. Don't worry about the result. Focus on things that you can control, things that you need to do. And then that way you're hoping for the best, but you're also planning for the worst, or you're planning for success regardless of what people say.
That's wonderful. I just so agree, and it's very evocative of the building the house, right? The brick by brick. And when you're first starting, right, you're not even laying the bricks yet, and you think, I've got nothing. Well, you don't have nothing insofar as you've gotten the plot, and I mean, there are all the steps that go in. And I think about, writing your book. You don't have a book because you decided you wanted a book. You have a book because of all that you decided to do every day. And I'm not sure what your writing is like, how you write, but for me, when I'm writing, I have scheduled times that I show up, and I just show up. And whether or not I did anything, if I did anything, I counted as success. Even the showing up, I showed up and maybe I didn't write, or I just reviewed, or I did some research. For me, I know how to write a book. I've written a bunch of books. And for me, I know that it's a long, arduous process. And then I know I'm going to feel bad throughout it at different stages because it's going to feel like, but that's the process if I want the end result. I don't have to go for that goal, but if that is my goal, the recipe is, right? What is what the book writing process like for you?
The book writing process was actually a ton of fun for me because it was just me spewing with passion. I was so passionate about getting these words down on paper because of my vision and what I saw I was trying to do, right? We talked about purpose and passion. I was so passionate about getting the messages out there. I wasn't passionate about having a physical book. Like I was never one to be like, oh, I'm an author. I'm going to be an author. And look at me, look at me. It was, I can't wait for people to be able to read these things and to understand and internalize the things that I've done that they could do to find success in their own lives. So that was the passionate part. And the purpose was like, if I don't get this done, then that's not going to happen. So I would just take time all the time around my business that I had managing money for a living. And I would work on it at night. I would work on it in the morning, and I was never tired. No matter how little sleep I got, I just was so excited to work on it. It was like a kid getting up on Christmas every morning, and that was like every day. I was just so excited to just type away and download from my brain on paper so other people can then upload it into their brains. And so I loved it. In fact, when I was done writing the book and it was edited, I had a sense of emptiness, a bit of sadness because that fun phase was over. I had climbed one mountain, and now I'm standing up at the base of another one having to then promote and sell and market the book. And that's something I've been doing for the past several months. But that's been fun too because the feedback I'm getting where people say, I got this book at the right time and it's like you're speaking directly to me. This is super helpful in my life right now. And it's all different people. And I even heard that some kids are reading the book. And so it's funny how it's resonating with so many people, different parts. People have different favorite chapters. So now it's sort of everything coming back from me putting it down on paper to people reading it and then coming back and telling me what they love and what resonated about it. So it's a very cool experience, but the goal is to help people. It's not to sell books. And so far the feedback has been very positive that I am so far accomplishing that goal.
Congratulations. That is
Thank you.
wonderful. When I think about applying what you're talking about to healthy work environments, I think that a lot of times the conflict or the toxic work environments happen because people are on the off. They are not paying attention. They are paying attention, but maybe to the wrong sorts of things because it is passive. I think conflict breeds out of passivity in a kind of way. Not, I mean, it's very varied, right? But
Mhm.
I can imagine if I'm showing up with, trying to maximize my potential and understanding what that is, and with passion and with purpose, I'm going to notice things that aren't working. I'm going to notice how, that what this other worker, coworker is doing and how maybe that I don't see that as resonating to be moving forward. And if I'm moving forward, I might be more likely to say, "Hey, Sally, what's going on?" Or, engage in that conversation because I'm looking, I'm active, and I'm going towards a goal. And I see the kinds of obstacles that can easily be turned to opportunities because they're coworkers, right? So if I see a coworker as an obstacle or a dam, which is a lot of what I see in my business, this person's obstructionist, this person's holding us back, but we're all held back because of this person. Well, that's a particular narrative that they've sold themselves, but there's another way, right? If I'm on mission, I'm going to find a way to either work with that person or have them be right here if they're still on the team, but move around them. Invite them to come anytime they want, but we're not going to be held back because of, I think this purpose can help us really be creative and not be stuck in these stories that we tell ourselves. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
that sounds just wonderful. I'm looking forward to reading your book and all that it has to offer. I love that it's life, life switch, not just work, because of course we're more than our work. And when the best kind of work we're going to be able to do is if we are living our best life and understanding what that means, getting clear about that and deciding what is that path and what the steps we're going to do to achieve that.
Yeah, totally. When you activate that best version of yourself, you'll realize that people want to be around you. They're drawn to you. People want to be on, but it's easier to be off sometimes. So people stay
Mhm.
off and they pull other people down. They turn other people's switches off. And as you've heard, misery loves company,
Mhm.
but it doesn't have to be your company. So look for the people that are on, that are charged up, that have the mission, that have pep in their step, they carry themselves well. Be with the crowd that you want to be with. I am
Mhm.
not one of these people that go around smiling all the time. I think I'd probably smile on the inside. But I know people that are outwardly super positive, and I love to be around those people because they bring me up. They make me shine brighter, and I try to emulate some of the things that they do. I don't want to be them,
Right.
but I like to be around them because the way that they make me feel and remind me that I need to make sure that my light is shining as bright as possible. But I know a guy that I almost partnered with. We almost merged businesses, and it would have been very lucrative. But this guy was the most off I've ever met. I mean, everything in his life is just a disaster. His attitude is terrible. We were in Hawaii having a business discussion, and he was just spewing toxicity and negative thoughts. And I'm looking at the ocean in Hawaii, and I'm like, how can you possibly be in this state of mind,
Mhm.
spewing this venom when we're in this backdrop? And I cut it off. I said, I do not want to be around this person. I don't want to feel, like I need a shower because, your thoughts are so toxic and negative and nasty. And so if you find yourself around someone like that, I don't care how much money it is, if it's a job or you're making good income, if it's raining at your on your core within you and you're feeling, a negative way, that's something that you need to really assess and try to plan around to figure out how can I get out of this? Because the reality is, like you think about how the Earth is, right? The Earth has its core, then it has its the crust on the outside. Like it's going to get wet on the outside at times, but the core never gets wet and soggy. And so your core shouldn't be affected by who you are at the inside on the inside by what happens on the outside. And if you feel that your core is getting affected, you really need to figure out how to make some change because that is changing you and you don't want to change who you are in a negative way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really another, you're very good at these illuminations of illuminating what you're talking about. So when we think
It's my
about,
mind. I can't turn it off.
that's great. So when you think about the principles, the three Ps, and what you've written about in your book, and we think about this year in on conflict manage, we're talking about generational issues and gaps at work. What principles do you see that might help people specifically who are listening and they're thinking, oh my gosh, this person at work, this young person, or this person who's at the end of their career, or this mid-career person, it's just, and it seems like it's something about their age. I'm having such a hard time being a good colleague with this person because I don't think they're a good colleague. What kind of advice do you have for bridging these gaps?
Yeah. There's something you can take from everybody. Something you can take as far as I want to be like that person. I don't want to be like that person. Nobody likes that person. Don't, oh my gosh, make sure that that's not ever me. Or that person has a story. What is it? What got them here? Are they not being a good person because they're just rotten? Or maybe they have something going on. Maybe I can help this person because I've gone through something that they're going through. Some of my best friends, my first impression of them was I wanted nothing to do with them. And so sometimes what you think you're dealing with on the surface is very different than the core, which is what we were just talking about.
Mhm.
But with today's youth, there's a sense that there's no hope. They're all kinds of stuff. But they are going to be here. They are the future, and there's things we can all learn from each other. I think they want to learn things from the older generation. I think they need to. And I think we need to realize that it's okay to sort of pass the baton. We're not putting ourselves one foot in the grave, but we are being open to technology and the future and how things are. Because if you're ignoring the younger generation, especially if you're a business owner or an executive, you're pretty much putting a foot in the ground as far as the death of your business,
Mhm.
because this group is only going to grow bigger and it's going to continue to come out this way with future generations. So same thing, you need to realize you're on the same page. You might have different skill sets and backgrounds and experiences, but that also is what can make it interesting at work. And again, you can even play a game. Okay, this person's the young tech whiz and I'm the old dinosaur, but together, we make a great team because we can apply our respective strengths and you can have synergy where 1 plus 1 can equal 3 or 4. And so that's something I think really makes a lot of sense, something to embrace that, look, I struggled with. I'm the young old guy. I'm in my 40s, but I'm just past that generation where I didn't grow up with a computer. I remember taking typewriting classes in high school, and I finally got an email address in 1997. These other kids, I think our kids were, by the time they were born, they already had Gmail accounts. So it's just, again, laughing about it and understanding it. But again, this is what it is. And again, how do you get to where you want to get to, right? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do? How do we do it together and as efficiently and as enjoyable as possible?
Mm. I love that answer because again, it goes to two things that we're talking about. What is your goal? And then gamifying things that you find difficult. So that is just a different kind of mindset. So the mindset of where am I going to go? Where are we going together? What's the collective? And sometimes that's a really good question to ask a team because if everybody's given different answers, that's really good information so that we can figure out how can we go in the same direction, right? That's first we got to
Mhm.
figure out where we're all going. And then if this person, let's suppose it's a young person and I don't understand them and I don't like the way they are in the world or what they seem to value, if I can gamify that, so now I'm no longer sitting in this my own toxic mess about this person and trying to find out, okay, I'm going to find out how we're going to work together. I'm going to find out what they're about. I'm going to find out how that them and me can make 3 or 4. Right? That's my mission. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to be approaching this person differently. And so they're going to find different energy from you because you're showing up differently.
Yeah, 1000%. Look, if I'm selling alarm systems these days, if I'm doing what I used to do, and that's knocking on doors and standing in supermarkets, I'm not selling any alarms. But if I'm finding a way to leverage technology and social media and different things like that the younger generation has really specialized in, that's going to be more successful for me. So that's where it comes back to what am I trying to do? And if I'm trying to ignore and shove under the mat this younger generation, it's not to say, well, you're better than me, but it's how do I utilize these parts over time to get better, to get more resilient, and to adapt. If you don't adapt and thrive, then you're on your way to not surviving in whatever capacity that you're dealing with. So it's being open-minded. It's realizing you can learn things from anybody and everybody. And again, it doesn't have to be good things. You can learn bad things to say, okay, I don't want to be like that, or well,
Mm.
he did this or she did that, so I want to make sure I don't do that. So when you look for opportunities, you will find them everywhere in your daily life.
Yeah, if you're looking. So, Joel, I'm going to end with my last question, which is when you look into the future of work, what do you think needs to happen so that not only will all people be treated with dignity and respect, but that people will thrive and flourish?
I think it's the same thing we've been talking about, where if you focus on what your goal is, right? If you have a business where you have a service or certain products for your consumers, you have to focus on those consumers relentlessly. What do they want from us? How can we better serve them? And how can we be most efficient in doing that as far as time, cost, energy? If we want to do things that are good for the environment, how can we brainstorm and be creative to do that? So when you have smart people in a room, all on the same page and committed to the same goal, great things are going to happen. But whatever you're doing, you have to realize why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. And if you do that, you stick to that, you're going to have success. But if you're just doing things to make money or because you did them before, you think you should, you might fizzle out. So the best way is to get people on a team, get them connected, have points to celebrate, get excited about. And you think about team sports and there's a champion every year in every sport. You see how they react like a bunch of kids having the time of their lives. And you can do that in your workforce. You have to decide what your championship looks like to you,
Mhm.
come up with that goal, and then make sure that everybody plays a role to win that championship.
I love that. Well, Joel, thank you so much. And if people want to find you and find your book, where would they find you?
Yeah, the book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, but you can visit my website to learn more about the book and the speaking engagements that I do about it. It's bookjoelsteele.com. But again, if you Google it, you'll find it on Amazon. It's a hardcover, an ebook, and also the audiobook, which I recorded myself.
Wonderful. Well, Joel, thank you so much. And happy birthday tomorrow.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Joel, thank you so much for a fabulous conversation. I love how you use all this different imagery to help us really think about your concepts. And imagery is so important because no matter where you are, dear listener, in your life, in your work, in your families, or wherever it might be, when we think about, um, when we have pictures, we can think, well, how can I apply that to myself? Because Joel's book, The Life Switch, everything that I talk about, it's all words unless you're able to figure out how to apply it to yourself. So I wish you all would go out and check out Joel's work and his book, Life Switch. And he's got this really, we didn't talk about it, but he's got this really interesting project that he wants to donate $1 million when he reaches a million viewers or readers of the book. And he's clearly really passionate about getting this message out. So I think that's just really wonderful. Conflict Managed is produced by Third Party Workplace Conflict Restoration Services and hosted by me, Mary Brown. You can find us online at 3pconflictrestoration.com. Come back. We have new episodes every Tuesday. If you would like and subscribe to wherever you're watching or listening, that's greatly appreciated. And I encourage you to check out my new book, Winning the Generation Wars at Work, Making Your Age an Asset, which is now available on Amazon and locally if you're here in West Tennessee. Our music is courtesy of Dove Pilot. And remember, conflict is normal and expected. Let's deal with it. Until next time, take care.